What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Dragon Age: The Veilguard and 4 things that I'm going to be looking for from this game in order for the game to be good. Now, we're getting very, very close. We got a week left. I think reviews drop on Monday, so, I don't know how great of a view, we'll have of the game based off the scores. I know a lot of people don't trust the scores and don't trust the journalists. I can respect that, honestly, but we're getting very, very close. So, with all that, I guess, being said, let's look at these 4 things. They're kind of somewhat obvious, but I want to kind of go into detail because, if these things don't work, let me start with the negative. These things don't work, I think this game is in a huge amount of trouble. If they do work, then this game, and I've said this before, I will continue to say this until the game comes out. If everything works with this game, I do think it could be a Game of the Year contender. There's a lot of games, and there's a lot of Game of the Year contenders, but I do think if they can pull it all off, which is a tough, it's not a guarantee, but if they can do it, I think it can be a Game of the Year type thing. Okay, well, let's just start with kind of an obvious one in the characters. So, having replayed Dragon Age 1 and 2, I wanted to get to Inquisition before this game came out. That's not going to happen, but I did replay and beat Dragon Age 1 and 2 within the last, month and a half, so it's kind of, in my head. And, things stand out, right? Like the highs and the lows of where the series was stand out. And, you look at those 2 games, and I'm actually pretty high on Dragon Age 2. The characters are very strong. And actually, you think of BioWare and the character, when they're at their best, right? They tell pretty darn good stories. They have a good amount of lore, right? All the jazz, which we'll get to that as this video goes. But you gotta feel connected to these companions, right? Like that, to me, I mean, there's a lot that makes Mass Effect special to me, but I think about specifically Mass Effect 2 and 3, and again, I'm higher on 3 than most people as well, and the characters, all of the companions, and the kind of journeys that these characters go through, with the quests you can go on specifically for them, right? Which Dragon Age 2 really started to kind of push that, right? Wasn't around so much in Origins, but funny enough, Origins actually has very solid characters, and they do it primarily just through conversations, right? Because they kind of go through arcs with these characters just by talking to them. That was kind of the way to do it in 2009, and then it started to kind of build and expand with Mass Effect 2, Dragon Age 2, so on and so on. So, I think a lot of us are looking for that in the Veilguard. Say what you want about any of the controversies, the best way to shut everybody up, right? Again, in terms of the more positive direction, have these characters be memorable, have these characters be deep, have these characters, it's actually not that difficult, at least saying it out loud. They've got to be characters that you care about. They got to be people that you're willing to go through, though. Because another thing you got to think of with some of these games, you don't always do everything, right? If a game's got 40, 50, 60 hours, it's got multiple paths, people aren't going to actually go through all of it. In fact, most people wouldn't actually beat the game. Most people don't beat just single-player games in general, right? So, you've got to give people reasons to care about these characters, to play with them, right? Take them with you, do their side stuff, and again, from, what we've heard, and I guess kind of, the structure of it, of your kind of your settlement and where everybody's going to be sleeping and just their placement, it seems like that part's pretty solid. I pretty much every game kind of has a hub where your companions are kind of located and you can kind of go in for more in-depth conversations. So they got at least the beginning right that we know of so far, but obviously they got to pull together the whole characters and to keep it simple with that, the story. When I think of Dragon Age 1, I think of kind of this larger than life, very high stakes, right? Pretty high stakes. And again, what I actually do like about Dragon Age 2, not necessarily better or worse than Dragon Age 1, but Dragon Age 2 is more personal, right? Dragon Age 1, again, big ramifications. And in some ways, maybe that's weaker because it's just more about, Hawk in 2. But also, it's those time jumps and then it's a situation. And then it's a time jump and then a situation. And it's more centralized to you, right? This one, the Veilguard, kind of is, again, more larger than life. And Inquisition kind of was as well, and also just the new features that Inquisition had, that kind of had the whole world almost participating, right? The war board and all that stuff. So I guess I kind of prefer games that have bigger views of these world type events. I just feel that's more impactful. But you know what? Again, individual stories can also be equally as good. in fact, that's kind of what I want with the characters, right? Like, give me this larger than life story, and have the ups and the downs and the twists and all that jazz. And then the character stories, the side quests or the companions type stuff, that's where you keep it a little bit more like on the ground level, right? Like more like day-to-day issues that are going on, or political stuff, or race stuff, whatever, which they've done all along, right? And they do it pretty much with all of these games, is they get, what species they're in, they get them involved and all that jazz. That's kind of what I'm looking, the blend between, this larger than life and this big scale conflict, and then kind of like putting it to the ground level, here and there, maybe in the base story, but then also with the companions and some of the side stuff. Okay, number 3 is having this game actually be the best gameplay that the game has ever had. So we've heard that, right? Like that, it's not like their go-to, it's not like their number one pitch, but we've heard it enough where you could put it like on the back of the box, right? Like you buy the Veilguard, you spin it around, and you see the quote from IGN saying, "This is the best gameplay a Dragon Age game has ever had." And I think they want people to say that, right? Because that's what they've said it multiple times. It's not like it's been once or twice. They've constantly talked about, and maybe it's because of fans, right? Because you get a lot of people that say, well, I prefer the gameplay here or there versus it. I really like 2's gameplay. I think it's a pretty good evolution. And I don't know, 2 gets a bad rap. Okay, I actually am going to do a video on my 3rd channel on 2 if you guys want to check it out. I go more in detail, but 2 I think is a good evolution of the gameplay of 1, and then it doesn't get so actiony like with Inquisition. However, I will say I do like Inquisition. I've always liked the gameplay. I've always liked Dragon Age's gameplay. I can jive with the first game. I think the second game is the more refined version of the first game, and then Inquisition obviously kind of changed things up. But they keep saying it. I just want it to be true, right? I want, when I play this game, to feel like, because here's the thing. There is going to be a lot of conversations. There's going to be a lot of dialogue. There's going to be a lot of story, a lot of lore, all that stuff. But, in those, like the minute-to-minute stuff, I guess beyond that, it's going to be a lot of fighting. It's going to be a lot of exploration, and it's going to be, let me go back to the fighting part, right? That's all it's going to be. That's what Dragon Age is, right? You go to an area, you get a quest, you solve a conflict, primarily through fights, and different classes that you can be, different classes that your companions are. That's what we need this game to be, and it needs to be fun as much as humanly possible with it, right? And it needs to be fun at the beginning. This can't also be a game where it starts slow and like, oh, once you get to level 20, then the gameplay kind of picks up. No. It needs to be fun right from the start, and it needs to evolve and continue to improve as you get more powerful, as you get more unlocks and all that jazz. And so, like, it's tough to say what would actually, like, break this game. Like, because really, they need all of these things, I think, to be extremely good. Like, if you lose 1 or 2 of these 4 things, what happens? Well, I do think story and characters are so important and strong in BioWare games that are good. And then also, though, the gameplay, I think you can probably get away with weaker gameplay because you just look at some of, like, I think Mass Effect has evolved, or did evolve back in the day with the gameplay, but, you can kind of get away with, like, Mass Effect 2's gameplay is not world-changing. It didn't, like, change anybody's lives, but the story and the characters and the lore and all that stuff were really good, right? So maybe, like, the gameplay doesn't need to be a 10 out of 10, but it is definitely something I'm looking for. And the final thing, I thought this would maybe be interesting just to talk about for a few minutes, is the tone. So I was thinking, like, kind of the art style, but as I've said before, really that's the main thing that I harp on, and that's fine. I respect your opinions as long as you respect mine. The game definitely has its fans and definitely has people that aren't a fan of really what's going on, but for me, it always has kind of been the art style that I'm not a really big fan of how the game looks, like the colors and stuff. So when I say tone, I mean that's kind of an extension of, like, the coloring and the art style, because I just need them to nail whatever tone they're going for, right? Like, if this is going to be this serious kind of thing, now you can have jokes, you can have some, like, lighthearted moments, but I need it to, like, be something, right? Whatever they want to define it as. And again, that goes back to, like, the art style, where it's like I'm not a fan of these, like, overly colorful, like, Fortnite-esque, kind of like bubbly, kind of like I don't know, cartoon-like characters. I don't really know how to describe it. That's probably not even a good way of describing it, but something about the art style just has always seemed off. I think it seemed terrible, like disgusting with that reveal trailer. And then, when you watch the gameplay and stuff, it doesn't stand out as much. But then you bring in the Darkspawn, all that stuff, and people will still have their critiques on it. So yeah, I guess that's kind of just what I want to say, in terms of leaving it there for the tone. I do want, like, a serious, more, like, grounded thing. And, that comes down to the the acting that comes down to that actually kind of encompasses the other stuff. Maybe not so much gameplay, but definitely how things are written and how things play out would affect the tone. But they just need to nail whatever they're going for. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.